Today I'm joined by Olivia Ramos, a student athlete at University of McGill, and she plays for the women's hockey team over there. And today we're going to be having a conversation about feminism and misogyny. How did you first get into playing hockey? Let's start there.
Yeah. So my parents put me in skating lessons as a young kid. I think around 3 I started. But what got me into hockey was my brother was playing. So, you see your older sibling out there and you kind of just want to emulate them. And when I saw that my older brother was playing, I just wanted to jump in as well.
Okay. And how did your dad kind of view this decision? Was he driving it or your mom? What was the difference between them?
Well, my dad's a big soccer guy, so I was playing soccer. So he was happy with that. And then I was also in ballet, but I quit ballet to go into hockey.
Oh, okay.
And, I think they were a bit, surprised at first maybe, but, they understood because McGill was playing, so I wanted to play as well. But, once I got enrolled and everything, they were really, really supportive, both of them. And both of them are very big hockey fans, and they're very big hockey parents. So, they're at every practice, every game, and they were really good about it.
Must have been a big difference going from, with all the girls in ballet to all guys in hockey, right?
For sure.
So when did you start kind of differentiating yourself from your female peer group? So you were obviously surrounded by a lot of boys when you were younger because you played with mostly guys teams, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So talk about that and how that kind of experience was. You're talking about how you're one of the only female players on your team when you were younger, right?
So I played New Westminster minor hockey, and it was myself and one other girl that played hockey. So it was just us two in a sea of boys, right?
Yeah.
But you're young, you're like, from ages like 7 to 10, right? Like, you don't really care all that much, and you're too little to really understand. A lot of my social sphere, other than at school, was with boys. So I was very much like a tomboy. Or tomgirl. I don't know which one it is.
I don't know either.
Either one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like I was very that way, and it was a bit different. Like hanging out with my friends, like they would all like hang out after school or like have slumber parties, and like I just wouldn't, or I'd go to hockey, or like it was a different world almost.
Okay, yeah. When you also saw your brother and his teammates, his boys, all of them together playing hockey and sharing that interest and that passion for the game, wasn't that something you kind of envied because you didn't really have, at that age at least, a full kind of group that you had with like similar interests that were all girls, so you kind of felt like you're a little bit alienated from that?
For sure.
And you weren't able to experience that as well, right?
For sure, it was different. And like, when you're in a hockey team with all boys, like the boys think, okay, like, and for example, like when you have a birthday party when you're younger, it's usually like mostly the gender that you are. Like usually it's all girls or all boys, and like some in between, or like you invite the whole class or whatever. But in terms of with my hockey friends, or like the boys that I was playing hockey with, they wouldn't think to invite me because like, oh, like it's like I'm inviting the hockey boys.
So you were kind of excluded from that,
right? Exactly. But like in terms of like in the dressing room, like on the ice and stuff like that, like our friendships, we still like had good friendships and stuff like that, and I was close with them, but it wasn't the same as I would have been with like little girls.
So when you put the helmet on and you went out there and you put the skates on, it was kind of like you were the same.
For sure.
But then once you got out of that kind of bubble, you realized, okay, there is some pretty big differences, right? And so also like, as your family is concerned, right? Everyone, like you mentioned, your brother kind of played more for fun and then he kind of had other interests and went a different way, whereas you stuck with it and you grew to play competitively and play to the highest level, which you are now. And would you say that, when your parents would say, oh yeah, our kids play hockey, your people that they would talk to would typically think, the son was probably the more capable of achieving, higher level than you? Like, how would you think they would view you differently as a female?
I think they just take the passion more seriously when it comes from the boy, you know what I mean? At least like back, that would have been like 10 years ago or so, or even more. you know, they just think, oh, like, oh, Miguel's playing, like, oh, they think, oh, there's Junior B, there's Junior A, there's the Dub, there's the NHL, like,
there's like
so
a route, there's
steps.
like, yeah, there's like a path that's cemented for him to follow, whereas you, it's like, you kind of felt like an outsider in a boys kind of group, right?
Yeah,
like a boys
so they
club.
think, oh, like, they put Olivia in hockey, because Miguel's in hockey, they spend all their time at the rink anyways, both kids might as well be in hockey, you know? So I think they just take it more seriously when it comes from the boy.
Yeah. So as you got a little bit older, you know, you saw when you thought about females and playing kind of those type of sports, you thought more about ringette, you know, figure skating,
for sure.
And you were kind of out here playing, you know, contact ice hockey with you know, all boys.
When I would talk with people, and they would be like, "Oh, so you play ringette?" Because they see a girl and they, oh, like ice skates, ice sport, ringette.
Yeah.
Or figure skating, but I never really got mistaken for a figure skater. I got mistaken for a ringette player a lot.
Okay.
Because you see the bag, they see me with skates. Oh, she plays ringette, but it took I play hockey. Like it's like very different for me, and I always took a sense of pride in playing hockey. And I think it was because it was like just myself, that other girl that played hockey, and I got mistaken for ringette so often. Even to this day, I don't really like ringette as a sport. I never watched it.
Because you just want to kind of reject that kind of
Exactly. I never want to be mistaken for it, and I always want to be distanced from it because, like, no, like I play hockey even though I'm a girl.
So, let's flash forward a little bit to 10 years ago. We played on the same team, West Coast Warriors, in the spring, and my dad is the coach. Your dad, my dad and your dad were the ones who created the team. And now, you know, you're kind of finishing your playing with boys, and you're moving on to kind of playing with girls your own age and your own kind of different kind of separate league. So what was it like making that shift, right? And going from, you know, when we played together, what were your experiences there?
So we were playing together 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
So I was 10, 11.
Yeah.
And that's when, like, the locker room separation started.
Of course.
So
you'd have to get changed in a different room.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I would, like, go into the bathroom and, like, get into all my dry fit and stuff like that. And, like, the boys would just be very cognizant to, like, turn away.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? But, like, it was different than it would have been, like, if no girls were in the dressing room.
Of course.
But, like, before that, like, when we're 7 or we're 8, like, it really didn't matter. But now I was starting to, like, get into that older, threshold of, like, puberty and stuff like that. So I started to go into the other dressing room or, like, another area.
Yeah, and I think as a member of that team and the rest of the guys, I don't think we ever really pointed it out, because I think my dad and the rest of the coaches and stuff, they didn't really make a big deal out of it. They didn't say, oh guys, you know, we've got this. Obviously they wanted us to treat you with respect, like we would any other member of our team, right?
Sure, that was such a good team to be a part of. Like, your dad did such a good job of making sure that there was no disparity between the treatment, and, like, that everyone was not so much, like, aware, but just, like, they didn't even have to be aware, because like what you said, like, they treated me with respect because we were all on the same team.
Yeah.
And the reason that I was on that team was because of the overage female rule.
Of course, yeah.
So it was, you could have an overage player on your team for the spring league, but that overage player had to be a female. Yeah.
And that kind of was like, you know, that had to put a stress on you, because you're like, not a stress, but like a little to be like, okay, well, I'm playing with people younger than me. First I'm playing with guys, now I'm playing with people younger than me, right? So you were kind of...
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It was like, and again, like, it didn't really hit home when I was 10, right?
Yeah, we just now, like, we learned the rules, those were the rules, okay, we played.
Like,
we didn't understand
my dad's
it.
Like, oh, like, we're gonna go play with Jeevan. Like, it sounds good. Yeah. But it doesn't click until you think about it later, and it's like, whoa, that was a crazy rule.
What about your shift from, you know, when we played together, and kind of your last few years of kind of being able to kind of play with guys before, you know, it gets really physical, and as you move up the higher levels, more competitive. Now all of a sudden, this is the environment you've grown up in, you've been playing in. Now you're shifting to playing on an all-female team. Yeah. And so what was the biggest differences there, and kind of how did that even occur? You know, how did you make that shift?
Yeah, so the initial plan was to stay in boys hockey until Pee Wee, when hitting starts.
Which is like 13, 14-ish?
Yeah, 13, I think.
Yeah.
But we ended up leaving sooner. So in my second year Adam, this was right around the time that I was doing the spring stuff with you guys. I think it was like the season after. So coming from like playing with Hearts, where it's like seamless, like didn't matter that I was a girl, that playing with you guys, it was totally fine. Then I went to try out for my second year Adam rep team.
Yeah, for your local team, right?
Yeah, at New West. So it's just me at the tryout in terms of girls. And I had played forward for you guys at Warriors. So going into the fall season, I wanted to play forward again for regular season. And they wouldn't let me. And there was no other reason other than that they thought I wouldn't be good enough because I was a girl.
So they forced you to play something else?
And well, they made me play defense. But like, keep in mind, it's a tryout. So like, I'm meant to try out for the position that I want to play.
So before the tryout even happened, they told you like, you're not good enough to play forward, you have to play defense.
Like we registered under forward and the coaches took it in their own hands. Like I'm 11 or 12, like they just made me go defense. And like my dad had no power, obviously he's in the stand watching. And then like he watched like the one game, okay, she's on defense, second game on defense, third game on defense, like they're not giving me a chance. On forward, meanwhile, like everyone else is rotating or like going for the positions that they want to go for. And it was just so blatant. And like my dad was just like, okay, like that's enough. Like if this is how it's gonna be, then we're gonna move. So we moved to Tri-Cities female hockey. I went in my second year ATA, and there was kind of like this like myth around me, like, oh, she came from boys hockey, she's gonna be so good, like she's been playing with boys, like she's gonna be crazy good. And I got put up a year, so they put me in first year, they put me in Pee-wee, so I did 3 years of Pee-wee.
So they made you play with older kids?
With older
just
girls.
Because they thought you were better at skill because you played with guys?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
When like like I was a skilled player and like I worked hard, but I don't necessarily know if I deserved to go up an entire year.
Yeah, but they had that kind of idea in their head that, you know, you came from playing with guys, you must be coming from a, you know, a higher level.
She must be way better.
Yeah, now you're gone from being the only girl in the locker room, and now you're surrounded by more, you know, all girls, right? And so now you're also, your peer group, your friend group has kind of changed too, because you mentioned about how, you know, you had been surrounded by mostly guys and boys when you were younger, and now your friends and your hockey friends are all females, right? So what's that kind of difference? Like how'd you adjust to that?
It threw me for a loop a little bit, just because, you know, I went into Tri-Cities very shy, because I had grown accustomed to, you know, like being surrounded by the boys in the dressing room, you know, like that was my social sphere. And it definitely threw me for a loop, and I crept back into my shell a little bit, which, you know, you would think the opposite would happen. You would think you would like become more outgoing when you're surrounded by your same gender or whatever, but I became way more shy. It was way out of my comfort zone, which is kind of strange.
What about like, now you're slowly getting older, you're going into high school now, and you're becoming a student athlete. And having been one myself, I know that my experience was way different from yours, right? So even in terms of like, you know, how your peers, how your teachers reacted to, you know, oh, I have to go to a tournament, I have practice in the morning, I have practice after school. Talk about that kind of disparity and how the experience was for you and how you handled it.
Yeah. So around grade 10, I would be 15. I played major midget. We now have like away weekends in Prince George. We play all over the province. And I had to, you know, leave school early sometimes. I had to miss Fridays, do this or do that. Had practices, had games, had to do this. And there were boys in my grade that were doing the same thing. And their hurdles in order to like miss school or like leave early or whatever were so much less than mine. Like, I had to provide written letters from my coaches, letters from my manager. I had to get all my schedules, like basically proof as to what I was doing.
Yeah, your teachers didn't take you seriously?
No.
They didn't think like, you know, you're playing at a competitive level just the same as the guys?
And I'm sure like they believed where I was going, but they just, I don't think they understood the merit of it, or they didn't understand like the, like, oh, like this is actually real, like she's actually at like a very high competitive level. Yeah,
they didn't give you that respect.
Exactly. Like I don't, and it's like, it's ignorance, right? Like you don't realize it. Like I was probably the first female athlete in my school to do that. Throughout the years of high school, like it loosened up a lot in terms of like what I had to provide. But like for the first couple years, like I wanted a spare block because in grade 11 and 12 I was starting to do academy, so I would leave halfway through the day on certain days and go to the gym, then go on the ice, then go do this and that with my coach and do specific training. And it was really hard for me to get that spare block because I needed to catch up on school for all the school I was missing. In grade 11 and 12 I was on a travel team. I was in the Junior Women's Hockey League, which is across Canada and the States.
For me, when I was in high school and I went to South Delta Hockey Academy, and we had, you know, so much different experience from you in terms of like, we all played high level hockey as well, you know, and when we ever had to tell a teacher that, oh, hey, we're gonna have to leave class early, we have a tournament in so-and-so, or we have an away game, we're gonna miss this class. For us, it wasn't like they questioned us. They had like a sense of pride. They treated us with respect. You know, being hockey players, they kind of like, I guess they have that old Canadian tradition of like, you know, these kids are going to be successful. They used to always joke with us like, oh, hey guys, you guys can go to the NHL, this, that. Like, they used to just joke with us, right? And I feel like for us as kids, as student athletes, we kind of embraced it, and we were like, felt like we had a lot of pride in it, where we're like, yeah, we felt like, yeah, we should be treated with some respect because that's the way we were. Whereas for you, you know, you were like playing at just as high or even higher of a level than us, and you were like having to prove yourself, having to like show documentation of where you were going. People wouldn't believe you, right? And it was like you were kind of like you really felt like you had to kind of fight for like, hey, like, you know, I need just the same kind of rights as these guys. I'm doing the same kind of stuff. But I feel like for the way that you were treated and the way that you were viewed was a lot different, just because they weren't used to seeing, you know, someone like you at that level.
Right? And in my senior year, like, it ended up, I've had the same feeling of pride, and like a lot of my teachers had grown to know me, knew my situation, and like they were great about it. But it was just the process of getting there was so different than my male counterpart.
I want to take a little bit step and talk about some off-ice stuff, right? And so around this time, I'm sure it was your first formal introduction, at least, to the ideas of the topics or the themes surrounding feminism, misogyny. And so what were your kind of views on that? Like, what do you remember kind of sticking out in your mind when you first kind of learned about the word feminism, right? Because obviously you had experienced, you know, different kind of treatments, and like you had described your experiences about that double standard and those kind of misogynistic experiences. But when you first learned, oh, there's a word for this, like, you know, this is actually like a real thing, like what did you kind of think about that?
Honestly, the first memories I have of the word feminism are guys in my grade talking about how much they hate feminists. Isn't that insane? Yeah. Like, that's my introduction to it, is negative. Yeah. And like, it would be like discourses about, oh, you know, these crazy feminists out there, like, oh, like, if like there were like any like goth girls in our grade or anything like that, like, they'd be like, oh, she's a feminist, like, you gotta stay away from her, she's crazy. That not like the formal introduction to it, but like that informal negative introduction to it is my first memory of it. So you saw that, you know, in a social aspect or with your peers, it had kind of a negative connotation. You didn't even want to bring it up. If a girl brought it up, it was like, oh, and you're like over here saying like, feminism literally just means equality. Yeah, exactly. And people are over here, you know, scrutinizing people who are fighting for equality, right? And they're kind of making these assumptions about them. Okay, yeah. So, and when did you kind of realize that the world, and they say like it's a guy's world, it's a man's world, right? When did you kind of come to that realization? When did you gain that knowledge that, you know, okay, I am different and I can't be everything and anything I want to be, because there are limits that are put on me by society because of my gender, right? When did you kind of realize that kind of, you know, reality? Yeah. And how did that knowledge kind of affect you? Yeah. They look at me, and I don't know what people's perception of a female hockey player is, but no one believes I play hockey. Yeah. Like, once I kind of got over the fact that like, okay, not everyone is going to understand that I play hockey and not everyone's going to get it, but once like I got most of the people around me like, oh, she's serious about hockey, she's a really good hockey player, and most of my family was really, really good about it, and like just convincing friends and I guess family friends. But I started to notice a difference between like them talking to me about hockey and them talking to some of my guy friends that played hockey or were in junior, right? For them, it would be like, oh, like the draft's coming up, or oh, like have you gotten scouted? Oh, this and this and this and this. And for me, I can't tell you how many times people have been like, you know what, like keep to your studies because you know what, hockey ends eventually. Like that's
they didn't really see a future for you.
That's what I got, and the guys were like, oh, draft's coming up, like are you excited? Like oh, scouts coming to this game, like oh, this is you know everything about like their future.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, you know what, like keep to your books, like hockey.
It's more of a hobby, they thought, right?
And even when university hockey ended up being an option for me or ended up being like a viable future, it was still like, oh, like you're going to school, like hockey is number 2, like you're going to school, and like that has merit to it, but the underlying tone is, you know, like hockey really doesn't matter to you, it's not going to be a future. Whereas like a lot of people aren't cognizant that there's, you know, the CWHL and stuff like that. Like they don't realize that there's a league that you can play in and get paid for and have a career.
Olympics.
Like, exactly.
You know
but like people don't get it, and it's just like, I think it's just a lack of exposure, or a bit of ignorance.
I think it's like, you know, they don't see CWHL on TV. They don't, you know, the women's Olympics finals don't have close to as many numbers in terms of views and stuff like that as the men's, right? So I think it is a lot like people aren't exposed to it, so they don't really believe it. It comes off as like a rarity, right? Did you even know that these universities had women's hockey teams?
No.
Right?
Like never. Never even thought about it.
Yeah.
Just never, like, it's honestly a lack of exposure. Like, never knew. Okay,
well, I mean, now you're at McGill, right? So, for me, going to Sweden last year to play hockey, it was a lot of advice being told to me, but it wasn't nearly, I'm sure, the same as what this type of stuff you were told, right?
Yeah.
So, once you committed to McGill, and you were starting to go there for your first year and you were starting to leave home, what were some of the comments, some of the kind of advice that your family and your close friends were giving you?
The conversations would just always be either like, you know, you can't walk home alone. You have to make sure no one puts anything in your drink. You can't take anything from anyone. If you're at the bar, get like a bottle of something and you open it yourself. Like all this stuff. I had one of my teachers who I was like very close with. We were at lunch before I left, and she was saying, okay, like when you're walking, you can't have your headphones in, you can't be looking down at your phone, you have to check over your shoulders every minute. Like I was like, it was crazy. I was like, why am I moving away if it's so dangerous? Like also, I'm just going to university, like why is this so dangerous? I didn't understand it until I came to McGill, or went to McGill. And I have friends who've been attacked. I myself, like, when I walk home, like I have like this dread and like this like fear in my chest if I'm walking home alone at night. Even like if it's 8 o'clock at night, I'm just like looking over my shoulder always. Like it's scary.
Yeah.
When like your friends get attacked when they're walking home from the library on main campus, it's insane.
Yeah.
And it's a reality, but I didn't comprehend it until I went at all. Like it didn't register in my brain until like actually walking home and feeling that fear.
Yeah. That's when it really clicked for you. I think that's something that's like a guy will rarely, if ever, feel that kind of fear, as you called it, right? That kind of sense of dread and that having to have that awareness because they're, you know, possibly being threatened, or you know, even having the fear of being threatened. You know, walking down campus late at night as a guy, I don't think you ever have that fear or even think about that, right? So I think that's something that's very unique and disturbing, that, you know, that girls have to go through that for sure. In Quebec, you know, at McGill, what was the difference compared to how it was back home in New West? You know, what was the kind of the differences, and kind of compare those?
Yeah, I would say New West is very sheltered. I was like a pretty sheltered kid, and going to Montreal, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's like it comes down to a belief system, or I don't know if it was just my own exposure, but like I had never been catcalled before here, not even in downtown, and every other day I'm catcalled in Montreal, especially at night, but like even during the day. some of my friends just down the street from us, at an intersection like this, like we live in like a residential area, people have like stopped her and like tried to ask her out, like have like followed her partially home. I've had one of my friends has gotten flashed. And like in the evenings, if we're ever walking, it like even if I'm in sweatpants and a sweatshirt, it just like constantly catcalled. And like I had never experienced that before.
It just makes you feel a little uncomfortable, right?
You're so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you just want to get out. Like I'm just trying to walk home.
Yeah, and that further kind of reinforces those worries and those warnings that you'd receive, right? You're kind of like
it just like puts you on edge.
Yeah.
Like you don't want someone whistling at you when you're walking by. Like you don't want someone like shouting like vulgarities at you while you're walking by. And like that's what happens. Like my friend, she was walking home from a party and was walking with 2 other people, and then the 2 other people turned down another street, and then someone I guess was like following them at the same time and like went up to her when she was alone and like wouldn't leave her alone until like she got to our intersection, and then we came out of the house and got her from the curb. But it was just like,
so that kind of harassment is just commonplace,
constant.
right?
Yeah. But yeah, even like going to school, coming home from wherever, like doesn't matter. I'm just, and not like it doesn't go to the degree of like following us, but like just like
even the subtle
standing
things,
there, like little comments and stuff like that.
So you have teammates, you have school friends, and so what about talking to them and seeing their experiences that they've had? They come from all different walks of life, different places, and so what are their kind of experiences, and what are some stories that you could share that they've told you, and how do their stories compare to your own?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like one of the girls that was attacked on her way home, that happened, and like obviously that was just like so scary to hear. But in terms of like teammates, a lot of that, it has a lot of crossover with my teammates. Not all of them played boys hockey, but just like in discussions with them about perceptions and like their interactions with peers and teachers and friends throughout their adolescent and younger ages, and like just the effort it takes to convince them that like we're serious about hockey.
You feel like that's a shared kind of struggle that you guys had to go through.
For sure.
So you had girls had to go through it.
Exactly.
Yeah. How are the women's team, you and your peers? How are you viewed on campus? By the peers, by the fans, by the teachers, whoever. Like how is your team kind of viewed, and what's the kind of perception of you?
Like you meet people and like you're either wearing the jacket or you have the backpack or whatever. Like people people do give you a sense of respect. Like, oh, she's a varsity player. Like it's good that way. And like there's a good varsity community at McGill. Like I really enjoy being an athlete there. But it's frustrating to just see the disparity between attendance at the men's games and attendance at the women's games, because it's just like it's so different. We struggle to get fans out, we struggle to get students out. It's the same thing. Like I've experienced this and like encountered this in discussions with people like going back to like early high school. I talk to them, I play hockey, blah blah, and like they'll be like, oh, I love hockey, but man, I would never sit through a women's game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's just so annoying to hear. They say, oh, like, women's hockey is so boring. I've had someone say to my face, women's hockey is the most boring sport out there. It's awful. I would never watch it.
And here you are, competing at the same level as these guys, the highest level you are. And it's the same games, the same rules, but just the difference because you're a girl. They don't see it as the same at all. They see you as less. I just don't understand it. And like, he's never watched a women's hockey game, so how would he know? It's just that connotation around. It's like that.
It's just the idea that like, oh, it's women playing, so it can't be as good as the men. And like, sure, I'm sure that a midget women's game isn't going to be as good as an NHL game, but you watch the women's team in the Olympics. Hands down, it's going to be, if not a better game, but like an equal game to the men's game. Yeah, so that work experience, it might have been a smaller scale. It might not seem like a huge deal. But when I reflected on it, I was really struck and it was a bleak realization, because it showed me that no matter how far I go, I'll always be seen as less than just because I'm female.